Now that we've had a brief introduction of Python and its fundamentals, we're going to get into something more interesting, something more specific to data science. We're going to look at this library called Pandas, which is an open source data analysis and manipulation tool, and it's built on top of the Python programming language. And this library is really what we're going to use throughout the videos going forward to do data analysis and also to create graphs. So as always, the first thing we're going to do is open up the Anaconda Navigator. You should have this downloaded by now. And we're going to go to the tile that says Jupyter Lab. We're going to launch Jupyter Lab and create a new notebook. So Jupyter Lab is open for me right here. I'm going to create a new notebook now. You can see here that we have our old notebook, which we created for Python basics. So again, you should be seeing this launcher here, and you can press Python 3 to create a new notebook. I'm going to rename this and call this Pandas 1. So I have a new notebook, and I know I'm going to be working with pandas in this notebook. Like I said, pandas is really a library for, doing all sorts of data analysis. Pandas, open source, useful for data manipulation / analysis. And another key thing to note is that it's built on top of the Python programming language. So this is what we call a library. Think of it as like a set of functions that we use quite often. So people decided to create a library for it so that we can reuse these things very easily. And it's built on top of Python. So all of these functions were built in Python, from the start. And all we have to do is use the functions. We don't have to recreate the functions every time that we want to use some of its functionalities. So pandas is going to be really important going forward. Since this is not built into Python, it's built on top of it. We have to import pandas. The way to do that using Python is writing the statement, import pandas, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so now we have pandas installed, and we can use all of its functionalities, which we're going to observe more going forward. So I have a question on the left, which we're going to try and answer. Let's read the question first. So we have to write a solution that creates a data frame from a list called student data, and it has the columns IDs and ages of the students, right? Right. So we have student ID and age as the columns, and it should be in the same order as the original list. So recall that a list is something like this. It starts with square brackets and then ends with square brackets. And then in between, it can contain one or more different data points. This can be the same data type or different data types. In this case, these are all integers, right? So we're asked to create a data frame. What is a data frame? You can sort of think of it as uh, an Excel file, okay? It's sort of Pandas' way of saying create an Excel file and it should have these columns and it should have these rows with these records. So that's, what you really have to know regarding data frames. Um, let's recreate this 2D list first. We're calling it a 2D list because we have a list within a list. So like I said, a list can contain any data type. It can also contain another list, right? So here we have a list of lists. So I'm going to just recreate this quickly, open and close brackets for the first list. And then we have to basically populate 4 different lists, right? So it should look something like this. Remember, there's commas in between each. And inside we have 1 comma 15. Here we have 2 comma 11, 3 comma 11, and then 4 comma 20. Okay, so what have we done so far? Let's just recap for a bit. We created a student data variable. And what do we have to do from here? So that's what we've done so far. Let's move on. I think I'll probably just, have it like this. So we know what this step did. By the way, remember, I didn't run this cell, I forgot. So the student data variable is not even saved. If I try to run this, it'll give me an error saying it's not defined. And this is one of the common errors that you should avoid. Always make sure that when you write inside a cell, that you run it. So I'm going to run this now. And then if I call this variable here, I get whatever is stored as its value. So moving on, we're asked to create 2 columns, one for student ID and one for age. So I'm going to create another variable and call it columns. So this variable is going to be another list, which is going to hold the names of the 2 columns. So the first one is student ID and the second one is age. Great. And I've run the cell. And our last step is to create a data frame using this 2D list and then have it be with this columns, right? The names of the columns should be student ID and age. So again, we're going to use data frame for that. There's a reason we imported pandas. So far, we haven't used anything with pandas, but now is, when we'll use it for creating a data frame. So I'm going to create a new column and call it students. And whenever I want to use a function or some sort of type in the pandas library, I first have to write pandas and then dot. And this sort of tells Python, whatever is about to come next is going to be in the pandas library. So pandas has a very famous data type called data frame. You see how this sort of changes colors? It's not black, it's a different color, which means Python recognizes this as some sort of special thing. So inside the data frame, we're going to first pass it what is the actual data for us. All of that is stored in student data. And the second thing we're going to pass, remember, I'm separating the different arguments by a comma. The second thing is the columns. And the columns or the names of the columns are stored in this variable called columns. And I'm going to close brackets. Closing the brackets means that, all of this information is contained within or available to this uh, special data frame type. Okay. Notice how, you know, we're sort of saying columns equals columns. This might seem confusing. That's only because we named this columns. I could have named this call, right? If I run this, and now I can say that the columns of our data frame, take that from whatever value is stored in call. So I'm going to run this, and everything seems fine. We don't get any errors. But how do I actually see what the data frame is? I can just print out the value of students now, since this is a variable that is a data frame, right? Before I even print it out, I can check its type. We've looked at different types so far, such as integers, strings, floats, booleans, and lists. And when we use data frames, we have a new type, which is a data frame type. And this comes from Pandas itself, So that's something interesting to note. If I run students now, you see how I get this sort of interactive row and column data table, right? And it sort of looks exactly like what we wanted. We have student IDs, and then we have their ages, right?